Mathematics as a philosophy of living. Structure, relationship, change, and uncertainty. Preface, a different way of seeing. Mathematics is often misunderstood as a discipline of certainty. Numbers, formulas, proofs, these suggest a world where everything is precise, solvable, and definitive. But this is only its surface. At a deeper level, mathematics is not about certainty. It is about structure, relationship, change, and uncertainty. And these are not merely abstract ideas. They are the very conditions under which life unfolds. Algebra, the limits of what is possible. Algebra is the study of structure. It tells us that beneath apparent complexity, there are rules, constraints that define what can and cannot happen. An equation does not tell us everything, but it tells us something essential: not all values are possible. Life within structure. In life, we often speak in the language of freedom. You can be anything. Everything is a choice. But this is only partially true. Every life is shaped by structures. The environment we are born into. The systems we move within. The abilities we possess. The resources we can access. These are not excuses. They are parameters. To ignore them is not optimism, it is miscalculation. The first mistake, ignoring structure. When people fail to recognize structure, they fall into illusion. Mistaking constraints for injustice alone. Mistaking randomness for opportunity. Mistaking limits for something that can be wished away. But algebra teaches a quieter, more precise truth: not everything is possible. But within constraints, something always is. The real skill. Maturity is not about denying limits. It is about understanding them, working within them, and, occasionally, reshaping them. Because only when you see the structure can you find where it bends. 2. Geometry, the meaning of where we stand. If algebra defines what is possible, geometry defines what things mean. Geometry is not about numbers. It is about relationships. Distance. Position. Perspective. A point, by itself, is nothing. Only within a system does it become something. Life as position. Who you are is not only what you are. It is also where you are. Who surrounds you. How you are perceived within a context. The same individual can be overlooked in one environment, indispensable in another. Nothing about the person has changed. Only their position. The second mistake, ignoring context. When people believe value is absolute, they suffer in silence. Staying in environments that cannot see them. Insisting on recognition where none can exist. Confusing misalignment with inadequacy. But geometry teaches, value is relational. Meaning is positional. The real skill. Growth is not only self-improvement. It is also repositioning. Finding environments where your traits matter. Building relationships that amplify your strengths. Understanding the coordinates in which you exist. Because sometimes, the problem is not the point, but the space it occupies. 3. Calculus, the power of change over time. If algebra sets limits, and geometry gives meaning, calculus introduces something more subtle: change. Life as accumulation. Calculus reveals two fundamental ideas. Small changes, continuously applied, create transformation. What we are is the accumulation of what we have done. Nothing meaningful happens instantly. Not skill. Not trust. not identity. The third mistake, misunderstanding time. Many people expect results without respecting accumulation. Seeking sudden breakthroughs. Abandoning efforts too early. Underestimating the effect of small, consistent actions. Or they make the opposite error. Working hard without direction. Accumulating effort, but not progress. Because they fail to ask, change toward what? The real skill. To live with calculus is to think in trajectories. Not where you are, but where you are heading. Not what you did once, but what you do repeatedly. It is to understand that, direction, sustained over time, becomes destiny. 4. Probability, the uncertainty of all outcomes. And yet, even with structure, position, and change understood, something remains. Something that mathematics does not eliminate, but instead makes visible: uncertainty. Life as decision under incomplete information. Probability does not promise outcomes. It only describes distributions. In life, you do not know the true odds. You cannot repeat most decisions. And results are never guaranteed. And yet, you must act. The fourth mistake, misreading uncertainty. People respond to uncertainty in two common ways. Avoiding it entirely, seeking false certainty. Or chasing it blindly, mistaking risk for opportunity. Both stem from the same misunderstanding, treating probability as prediction, rather than as decision-making under uncertainty. The real skill. Probability is not about being right. It is about evaluating outcomes and their costs. Accepting that failure is part of the distribution. Increasing exposure to favorable possibilities. Ensuring that the worst outcomes are survivable. Because in life, you do not control results. You influence distributions. Where they meet, the tension that defines life. Each of these dimensions reveals something essential. Algebra defines the constraints of what is possible. Geometry shapes the meaning of where we stand. Calculus reveals how change accumulates over time. Probability reminds us that none of it guarantees an outcome. And life happens in the tension between all four. To understand only one is to distort reality. Structure without probability becomes determinism. Relationship without structure becomes dependence. Change without direction becomes exhaustion. Probability without foundation becomes speculation. Wisdom is not choosing one. It is holding all four at once. 6. A practical life, seen through this lens. A person who understands only certainty waits. A person who understands probability acts. A person who understands calculus persists. A person who understands geometry adapts. A person who understands algebra navigates. But a person who understands all four lives deliberately. They do not ask, "Is this guaranteed to work?" They ask, "What are the constraints? Where am I positioned? What happens if I continue? What are the possible outcomes, and their costs?" They do not avoid risk. They price it. They do not chase opportunity blindly. They allocate toward it. They do not expect control. They build resilience within uncertainty. 7. The final realization. Mathematics was never about certainty. It was about clarity. It does not tell you what will happen. It tells you how the world is shaped. Bounded, but not fixed. Relational, not absolute. Changing, not static. Uncertain, not random. And so, to live mathematically is not to calculate everything, but to see more accurately. To choose more consciously. To act, not because outcomes are guaranteed, but because within constraints, relationships, change, and uncertainty, there is still a space where choice matters. Closing. In the end, a life is not measured by how often one is right, but by how well one understands what was possible, where one stood, how one changed, and what risks were worth taking. Because beyond all formulas, proofs, and abstractions, mathematics leaves us with something far more human, not certainty, but the courage to act without it.